The world is interconnected. Goods flow freely across borders. But behind this bustling trade, a dark reality exists. Millions of people are trapped in forced labor and human trafficking. This isn't a problem confined to one region or industry. It's a global crisis that demands our attention. This essay will explore the issue, examining its causes, consequences, and potential solutions. We'll delve into the role of corporations, the impact on victims, and the fight for justice. This isn't just about statistics, it's about real people. Men, women, and children exploited for profit, trapped in horrific conditions, denied basic human rights. It's time to shine a light on this darkness and demand better.
Forced labor and human trafficking are not just humanitarian issues. They pose significant economic, social, and security risks. Economically, these practices undermine fair competition. They create an uneven playing field for businesses. Socially, they erode trust in institutions. They fuel inequality and instability. From a security perspective, these crimes are often linked to organized crime. They can destabilize regions and contribute to other forms of criminality. Ignoring this problem is not an option. The cost of inaction is simply too high. We must all be aware of the issue. We need to understand its complexities, and we must be prepared to act.
Forced labor refers to work that is extracted under threat or coercion. This means that individuals are compelled to work through the use of force, threats, or other forms of intimidation. They are often trapped in these situations with no means of escape. Victims are forced to work against their will. They are often subjected to harsh conditions and long hours with little to no pay. The environment is typically oppressive, leaving them feeling hopeless and trapped. They face punishment if they refuse. This can include physical violence, threats to their family, or other severe repercussions. The fear of these consequences keeps them in a cycle of exploitation. Human trafficking involves the recruitment, transportation, or harboring of individuals for exploitation. This illegal trade is a global issue, affecting millions of people worldwide. This often involves deception, force, or abuse of vulnerability. Traffickers may lure victims with false promises of employment, education, or a better life, only to exploit them once they are under their control. The International Labour Organization estimates that 27.6 million people are in forced labor globally. This staggering number highlights the widespread nature of the problem. Another 22 million are in forced marriage. These numbers are staggering. Forced marriage is another form of exploitation, where individuals, often women and girls, are coerced into marriage without their consent. Victims come from all walks of life. They can be found in every corner of the world, regardless of their age, gender, or background. They are men, women, and children. Entire families can be caught in the web of forced labor, with each member suffering in different ways. They represent diverse ethnicities and backgrounds. This issue transcends cultural and national boundaries, affecting people from all walks of life. However, certain groups are particularly vulnerable. These groups often lack the resources or support systems to protect themselves from exploitation. These include migrants, refugees, and marginalized communities. They are often targeted due to their precarious situations and lack of legal protections. Poverty, lack of education, and discrimination increase their risk of exploitation. These factors create an environment where individuals are more susceptible to being coerced or deceived into forced labor. Forced labor can infiltrate any supply chain, regardless of the industry or location. It's a global problem that spans across various industries, affecting millions of workers worldwide. From agriculture to manufacturing to construction, exploitation lurks in the shadows, often hidden from plain sight. The complexity of global supply chains makes it difficult to track every stage of production, allowing forced labor to remain undetected. This lack of transparency creates numerous opportunities for abuse and labor rights violations. Companies may unknowingly source materials or products made with forced labor, complicating efforts to ensure ethical sourcing. For example, the fashion industry relies heavily on cheap labor to keep costs low and profits high. Clothes are often produced in countries with weak labor laws, where regulations are either insufficient or poorly enforced. Workers in these regions may face unsafe conditions, excessive hours, and poverty wages, making it difficult for them to escape the cycle of exploitation. Similarly, the electronics industry uses minerals mined in conflict zones where labor exploitation is rampant. These mines often rely on forced labor, including children who are subjected to harsh and dangerous conditions. Consumers rarely see this hidden human cost as the exploitation is far removed from the final product. They may unknowingly purchase products tainted by exploitation, highlighting the need for greater consumer awareness and ethical consumerism.
Section 5. Corporate responsibility, a pivotal role. In today's interconnected world, the role of corporations extends far beyond profit margins and shareholder value. Corporations have a crucial role to play in combating forced labor. They are in a unique position to influence global labor practices and set standards that can lead to significant change. They have the power to influence their supply chains. By implementing strict guidelines and ethical standards, they can ensure that every link in the chain adheres to humane and fair labor practices. They can demand ethical practices from their suppliers. Transparency is key. Without it, unethical practices can easily go unnoticed and unaddressed. Companies need to know where their materials and products come from. This knowledge is essential for maintaining integrity and trust with consumers. They must be able to trace their supply chains from start to finish. This means having systems in place to monitor and verify the origins and handling of all materials. This requires robust due diligence and auditing processes. Regular audits and assessments help ensure compliance and identify areas for improvement. Corporate social responsibility is not just about avoiding negative publicity, it's about creating a positive impact on society and the environment. It's about doing the right thing. Ethical decision-making should be at the core of every business strategy. It's about treating workers with dignity and respect. Every worker deserves a safe and fair working environment. Companies that prioritize ethical sourcing gain a competitive advantage. They build stronger relationships with consumers and partners who value integrity. Consumers are increasingly demanding transparency and sustainability. They want to know that the products they buy are made responsibly. They want to support businesses that align with their values. By prioritizing ethical practices, companies can meet these demands and foster loyalty among their customers.
Section 6. Case studies when corporations fail. Unfortunately, there are numerous examples of corporations failing to address forced labor in their supply chains. These cases highlight the devastating impact on victims and the reputational damage to companies. One high-profile example involved a major chocolate manufacturer. The company was accused of sourcing cocoa beans from farms that used child labor. Despite previous commitments to eliminate child labor, the problem persisted. Another case involved a global fashion brand. The company faced scrutiny for its use of sweatshops in developing countries. Workers reported unsafe conditions, forced overtime, and verbal abuse. These cases demonstrate the need for greater corporate accountability. They also highlight the importance of consumer pressure in driving change.
Section 7. The law. International efforts and limitations. The international community has recognized the severity of forced labor and human trafficking. Numerous laws and conventions aim to prevent these crimes. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights prohibits slavery and forced labor. The International Labour Organization has conventions addressing forced labor, child labor, and trafficking. However, enforcement remains a challenge. Laws vary across countries. Some governments lack the resources or political will to address the issue. Corruption and weak governance can hinder efforts to protect victims. International cooperation is essential to combat these transnational crimes. Governments need to work together to share information, coordinate law enforcement, and support victims.
Section 8. Taking action. Solutions for businesses and consumers. Combating forced labor requires a multifaceted approach. Businesses and consumers both have a role to play. For corporations, ethical sourcing is paramount.